This episode is brought to you by the supporters of 40 Watt Podcast over on Patreon. Go over to patreon.com/40watt podcast, where for as little as $3 per month, you can help support the podcast and get every episode ad-free. For $5 a month, you'll get every episode ad-free, as well as a bonus episode every week. I can't overstate how thankful I am for the support of my patrons, and hope you'll consider joining the team and helping keep this show on the road. Hello, 40 Watters. Welcome to another episode of 40 Watt Podcast. Before we get into the conversation with Mark and Sean from Seuf Guitars, y'all already knew. Y'all saw the thumbnail. You've read the description. You've seen the title. We're not giving away anything here. Going to talk about things here at the top real fast. We're going to talk about a couple of things that are happening right now. This podcast is supported by some pretty great sponsors, and I really need to talk about them. Number one, we got Barry over at Seuf Guitars, who has finally released the Grand Tour, which is the guitar that I have begged Barry to make. I'm not the only one, y'all, for what it's worth, but I loved working with Barry to make this model happen. I say working with, basically me saying, hey, I really, really want this, and then him finding a way to make it work. And I'm really happy with the response everybody's giving. Everybody's loving it so far. So go over to GrezGuitars.com, check out the Grand Tour, go to the Instagram at GrezGuitars on Instagram, and check out the videos and all the stuff about the Grand Tour. It's finally on its way to me, and I'm really excited to finally have it in my hands and have it to myself after a lot of other people have gotten to play it before me. I did get to play it in Chicago at Fretboard Summit. Also, this podcast is brought to you by Summer School Electronics. Mark over at Summer School is releasing some of the most fun pedals and really kind of putting a really creative spin on it. Single pedals that are blends of circuits, like a Rat and a Big Muff, or a Rat and a Tube Screamer. He's also got his newest pedal, which is right here. This is the Summer School Electronics Extra Credit Boost. I really like this, because I know that running a boost into an already gainy amp, like I do sometimes, you lose some brightness, gets a little muffled. This has a switch that adds brightness back to it, and it's actually got a brightness knob. I think this is an incredible boost. I really, really like it into a gained up amp, but it also works into a clean amp. So go check that out. Go over to summerschoolelectronics.com, or you can go to Instagram at Summer School Electronics and follow what they're doing. Buy a pedal or two. I've got a class reunion and a science fair as well, and I love both of those pedals. You can even get a custom pedal made that has your pet's face on it. I mean, go do that while they can, because if they get too popular, they're not going to be able to keep doing these custom enclosures with your pet on them. So go get those while those are still available. Moving on, Patreon supporters, thank you so much for your Patreon, your patronage, as it were. This week, new patrons, we don't have any. I appreciate every one of you, though, that is still supporting the podcast. It's been a pretty rad year. You've got a pretty fun episode this week on the Patreon. Got really nerdy into guitar building and talking about things like plex and thin finishes and making your own pickups with Mark and Sean. I think you're really going to enjoy this bonus content. And if you're not a Patreon supporter, you can go over to patreon.com/40watt podcast, where for $5 a month, you can get bonus episodes. Incidentally, I do have a few of you that are still $3 supporters of the podcast. I really, really appreciate you. Y'all don't even get bonus content. I am wondering, though, if I should trim my Patreon back to just one tier. There are multiple tiers: $3 tier, $5 tier, there's a $10 tier. I really love all you $10 supporters. You guys really, really, really take care of me and make sure that this show is going. But I don't know. What do y'all think? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think I'm done. I think that's all the selling I need to do. Click all the links below to find Seuf Guitars, Summer School Electronics, Seuf Guitars. The Patreon is there. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for making the show possible. Glad you're listening. If you are watching on YouTube, please click like and subscribe. If you're listening on your podcast player, please make sure you're following the podcast. Rate and review it. That's the easiest way to make sure that other people find the show. In the meantime, let's get on to the podcast. 40 Watters, welcome back to this episode of 40 Watt Podcast. This week, I am joined with a couple of guys that I got to know at Fretboard Summit. Yeah, that's right, another Fretboard Summit meetup that I'm bringing to you because it was just too much fun. And this is the non-sponsored part of the show where I tell you, go buy your Fretboard Summit tickets. If you haven't bought them yet, I realize that it is a long way from now. It's like 11 months from now, but those tickets are going fast, and you do not want to miss what I think is my favorite guitar gathering that happens all year. So go buy those tickets. Go to Fretboard Summit. I think it's fretboardsummit.com. Just search for Fretboard Summit 2025. But this week at Fretboard Summit 2024, I met Sean and Mark from Seuf Guitars, and I was like, I got to get these guys on the podcast, tell these stories, and see what's going on. Sean, Mark, how are you guys?
Good, man.
Good, man.
Good deal. So, hung out a lot at Fretboard Summit. I feel like I spent most of my time in the room y'all were in, between y'all's guitars. Chase Bliss was in that room. Summer School Electronics, who's a sponsor of this podcast, was in the room. Brown Audio, Voltic. I mean, just there was so much cool stuff. Maynard Madsen Amplification was there. Avian Audio. It was this place. It was the place to be. It really was. Also, being that Charles was the only amps in that room, that meant we weren't competing for volume with everybody else anywhere else.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
So we got to hang out, played a bunch of rad guitars, and we're going to talk about those guitars here in a minute because my most controversial Instagram reel I've ever put up was inspired by that guitar.
Was that controversial?
It was a little bit. People got mad at me, man, for calling Telecasters a perfect guitar. I don't understand.
They are.
They are, right?
Yeah.
I don't understand. There are people who agree with me, and there are people who are wrong. There we go. More controversy.
Bingo.
Y'all, while we're here, y'all, most of you understood what I meant. It's just because it's a perfect guitar. It doesn't mean it's the perfect guitar for everybody. Doesn't mean it does everything.
It does most things.
Yeah, it does most things, but it also doesn't mean it's the only perfect guitar. There can be another perfect guitar, but a Telecaster, I don't think you really need to change anything about it.
No, absolutely not.
I agree.
And the Les Paul is a perfect guitar.
It is. It absolutely is. The only time I would ever change anything about a Les Paul is the rare occasion where I would really love to just have a master volume knob. Instead of the dual volume, although you can get some really great sounds that way.
Yeah.
So let's get into this. Let's tell the people who aren't as familiar with Seuf Guitars. Let's get your stories. How did y'all get into guitar in general, playing into this weird world of instruments, and then how did you end up deciding you wanted to build guitars?
Oh man, we were both bedroom players for about 15-ish years before we got started in this, and then we were playing in bands in the early 2000s and stuff like that, and as that kind of slowed down a little bit, I ended up getting a job working doing wet sanding for Mr. Seuf himself, who has since retired, and then gradually, as time went on, I ended up running the repair shop, and brought Sean on, and he started doing the things that I started out there doing, and then ended up painting. Mr. Seiferling retired, and we took the company and ran with it, started a new repair shop, and here we are.
That's more or less it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I moved back to Kansas City from Columbia, Missouri in late 2013, and I think within 6 months or so, I was kind of in the shop helping Mark out on my off days, and I was wet sanding. I'm still wet sanding.
You're a dry guy now.
I am a dry guy. I am a dry guy now. I switched from a wet system to a dry system, but I'm still sanding finish most of the time.
I am far too heavy-handed for wet sanding. I've discovered.
Most people are.
I've never discovered the touch required to get that down to an art form.
It sucks, and it takes years and years and years, and then it like I still fuck stuff up. So
And yeah, it feels like the kind of thing that you ruin the finish on a lot of guitars before you ever get good at doing it, or maybe you just ruin the finish on the same guitar over and over and over again until
yeah,
you figure it out.
yeah. I mean, I think I'm in maybe my eighth or ninth year of actually spraying and doing all the finish, and I think I'm finally starting to get it. Like that's like it's like okay, yeah, I'm pretty good at this now.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's still a long way to go. I think.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I finally got I had been seeing your guitars, and it took me a little while to remember exactly where I remembered like the first time I saw them, and it was definitely Ryan from Demos in the Dark.
Hmm.
Was the first time I saw any Seuf guitars. Ryan's a great guy. He's been on the podcast, and
Yeah.
so to play them in person finally, that was the beauty of Fretboard Summit. I finally got to play so many guitars I've only ever heard about, and
Yeah.
in that way, I think it's far superior to NAMM because I don't really want to play guitars when I'm at NAMM. There's just too loud, too much going on, too crazy.
Sensory overload.
Oh,
There,
completely,
man. Like,
completely. Can't focus. I don't. It's like you could stick anything in my hands to play, and it's like there's too much going on for me to figure out if this is good or not. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, I got to spend a whole bunch of time with an OH20 that I'm still kind of obsessed over. There in like the raddest sparkle orange finish. I've got I tried to take a photo that I was going to post on Instagram, and my photo was terrible, so I didn't post it.
Sparkle is so hard to
hard.
get a good photo of.
Yeah. Yeah. Taking pictures of guitars is an art form that no one
Hmm.
told you needed to learn. Especially in like, actually, I guess we know this because all of us have seen the guitar listings for sale that where nobody seems to know how to take a picture of a guitar that's worth
Hmm.
anything. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
but so y'all have, I was looking at your website. You've got the OH. We're going to talk about these model designations at some point.
It'll all click once we tell you what it
Okay.
actually is.
You got the 10, the 16, the 19, and the 20. And then y'all also had at Fretboard Summit, you had a basics. What?
Yeah,
Uh,
I'll call that the OH6, I guess.
Okay. Okay. Because I was looking on the website. I was like, that's not here, but I know it exists. It's a thing. I've seen it.
Yeah, we're not probably gonna do very many more of
Oh,
those.
really?
Yeah, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze, but it's cool.
It was cool. It was a rad one to play. I just
yeah, it was
recently
killer.
Yeah.
traded my bass six because it was one of those things that was like, this is rad, but I'm never going to pick this up over my P bass, right?
Right. Or like every once in a while we'll get asked to do a 12 string. It's like, are you sure you want to spend that much money on a 12 string?
I have a hard,
If,
so let's talk about that for a second because that is a lot of money. We're not talking about, y'all listeners, if you didn't catch the gist, we're not talking about budget instruments here. We're talking about made by a couple of folks in a shop making, how many guitars y'all make a year?
About
pretty much
70.
Wow.
about 70.
So yeah, 70 guitars a year, not a whole lot. Um, and so the price is going to reflect that, listeners. We're not going to start just throwing prices out here. Y'all can look it up. Y'all can ask around for prices. Um, so when you start talking about something like a 12 string or even a bass six or, certain instruments, unless that is your like main ride, that's your number one whip. Are you really ready to spend, three, four, sometimes even other builders $5,000 for something that's not your everyday driver?
I wouldn't do it.
I
I
I don't know. Like I think there's a lot of really good ones like on just readily available to buy.
Yeah,
Uh Bass 6 maybe, but like a 12 string, it's like they all kind of sound the same. So,
they're all equally out of tune. So,
yeah.
uh,
yeah, it's great.
what was it? Ibanez makes like a $400 12 string semi hollow. I mean, 12 string semi hollow electric guitar. I'm like, and it sounds great. It plays fine for the one song a year I need to play. I don't have one because I don't play electric 12 string. But if I did play electric 12 string, I needed one. That's what I would do. I would go find a used, Ibanez or used Dan Electro or something like that.
Yeah, we've got a 12 string OH20 that we had let a friend borrow for the last 6 years and just got it back. If that's any indication of how often it gets used.
Yeah, I get it.
But it's rad. It's so rad. I'm about to overhaul it again and get it back up to snuff. But that's going to be on my own time.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about the naming. Let's talk about the naming scheme. So listeners, just for the record, OH10 is a J style instrument. OH19 would be an S style instrument. OH20 would be a T style, and then OH16 is a bass. Looks like a P bass style instrument. So not unfamiliar form factor here. You're using a pretty tried and true classic design. What's with the naming scheme?
All right, so use your imagination here. I'm just gonna say the OH10. J is the 10th letter of the alphabet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. That I think the number. What's the OH?
Old hand.
Old hand. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Feels old in the hand.
Got it. Okay. Suddenly it makes a lot more sense, even if it's going to it drives people with like they're not in number order, like because they're not, like, even on the website they're not in number order in the drop down menu. And like there was a part of me, y'all listeners, I'm a librarian in my day job. Getting things in order is kind of a thing, and I was like, this doesn't make any sense. I don't get it.
I never even noticed that.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
No.
We didn't build the website, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it goes 10, 19, 20, 16.
That's probably by popularity.
Oh,
no?
Yeah.
Is
I don't know. I don't know how I would sort that.
Yeah, me either. So let's talk about a little bit around the design philosophies, like what drives you to the way you do things. Everyone's got like an ethos in the way they build instruments. And we didn't talk about that at Fretboard Summit at all, because all I did was just really interested in playing, and y'all brought a bunch of great instruments. But like I said, I played that 20 the whole time. That was basically I did play the basics for a little bit, but that 20 was special. And it was basically, I would not normally be an orange guitar guy either. The sparkle's fine. I don't care about sparkle. I can do that. But orange is not really a color I normally like, but that was a special instrument. And so I sort of get it. So where's that philosophy? Like, what are you trying to do with the guitars y'all are building?
We're basically trying to, like, the goal is always bang for your buck. So we're going for highest quality that we can possibly get, and still be accessible to a working musician. So that's kind of the ethos. And I mean, really, it's a lot of it is just like we do what we want to see, or what we've had to do because our background is in repair and restoration. Like, we do what we've seen and what we'd like to feel out of a vintage guitar, and then make it more stable.
Yeah, because those of us that have played, and listeners, I know a lot of you have, those that have played a lot of vintage instruments know how wildly inconsistent they can be. It doesn't matter how good they're supposed to be. I've played at this point in my life 6 or 7 bursts, and only a couple of them would I have called a really good instrument.
Yep.
So it's just one of those worlds. So y'all, obviously, listeners, go look at the website. You can see pretty classic Fender style designs. Do you have any original designs cooking up? Are you thinking about doing something sort of from the the other side of that guitar aisle in the Gibson camp or anything like that?
I
Inspired
think we'll
by,
get
as it
there.
were.
We'll get there eventually, but it's probably just going to be original designs. Uh, I'm like not very good at drawing in CAD, so I'm gonna have to pay somebody to like work with what we're trying to do.
Mhm.
Like I can draw a couple lines here and there, but I'm not very good at drawing. Luckily, I have tons of colleagues who are, so it's just kind of like we'll eventually hammer down what exactly we want and what we're going for, and still like try and have some customizable neck shapes with that, and then you know then it's off to the races. But we're so busy doing what we do now, like it hasn't felt necessary yet.
Yeah, I get it. That's very cool because I do think that the instruments y'all are making have a very, um, I don't know if unique is the right word because it's familiar when you play it and the feel of it, but it's definitely exemplary. That was the thing that stuck out to
Hmm.
me. It wasn't unfamiliar to play, but you could definitely feel that okay, this isn't the same as picking up XY. Actually, recently, I picked up in a trade a a Fender Custom Shop Telecaster,
Hmm.
and it was actually the first time I've ever touched a Fender Custom Shop instrument. I've made it 25 years of playing guitar and had never played one. Probably because Fenders aren't typically my like go to.
Yeah.
I'm a 335 guy. I'm a Les Paul
Hmm.
guy. I've always loved a Telecaster, but I never could find one to like keep. Like I always wanted
Hmm.
to like have this like romanticization of the Telecaster in my head. Um, but then I picked this one up and I was like, oh, I get it. I really get
Hmm.
this. And I had the same experience playing y'all's. That's like, oh no, I get this now. This feels right. Uh, so how much of playing vintage, S and T and J style instruments have y'all had before getting into doing this kind of thing?
Fucking years, man.
Really?
Yeah, tons.
Yeah.
Tons.
Like our background is in restoration.
Okay.
So yeah, so we've seen a lot of old vintage guitars.
Yeah. So what's the worst case you had to restore? What's the worst off guitar you had to turn around?
Hmm. Let's see here. Oh, that Ibanez Iceman.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty bad. That was a job. Uh, no, basically, it's one of those ones with the top mounted jacks in the route with the cavities and everything. And the jack had been completely ripped out of it, and it like had to patch in new wood and like save the original burst and like touch it up and try and like color match everything. And it was yeah, that was a big mess of a job. Um, Honestly, like your bigger brands like your Gibsons and Fenders, those are all made well enough to that they're really like pretty easy to restore. Uh, if something needs a new neck or like a new headstock on a Gibson that's been broke 40 times,
Right.
uh, I think we typically pass that along to somebody who like remakes headstocks more often than never. So we never we don't have to we don't really take in stuff like that, but I know a lot of talented guys who can do that. So I've always got good recommendations for stuff like that. So I don't know, but like there's been countless refrets on vintage Fenders and Gibsons and Gretches and everything. That reminds me of something that sucks. Rebinding an old Gretsch where
Oh
the
my
binding is
gosh.
rotted off. You know what?
Oh,
That's
never
that's
again.
that's that's worse than doing an Ibanez with a hole in the top of it.
That's
I
true.
will never ever take on a rebind on an old Gretsch ever again.
I have
There's not
told
enough money.
I have told people this about old Gretches that and some people just don't agree with me, but I genuinely believe Gretsch quality now is better than it ever was on those old school
Absolutely.
instruments.
Absolutely.
It just
The old ones are made out of spit and popsicle sticks, man.
exactly.
Like, they're not good.
They're
They're great for if that's your 401k is buying vintage guitars and keeping them under your bed until you're ready to flip them, then it's a great investment. If you're a player, fuck them.
Yeah. They do this thing, the neck heel, the glue never seems to hold properly up to the years.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is the crumbling of the binding that just I know that the binding from that time period, it off gases and gets brittle, but I've never seen a guitar do it the way Gretsch's do. They just disintegrate.
God, it looks so cool right before it starts to disintegrate, though. I understand it. I get it. Like, it's so rad, and then it's done.
Oh, that's and I get that they have a sound, but I mean, you can get that sound today. Like, you can still get that sound and play just a better quality instrument. I say that about not all Gibsons that are made today, but I think some Gibsons today are made better than even they were making in the 50s and the early 60s.
I agree 100%. Like, my only gripe about the modern stuff is that they don't do the variations on net width as much as they used to.
Yeah.
So I love the fat necks. I love a 58 neck, but I would prefer it to have just a slightly skinnier nut.
Okay.
And then all that girth, that's my jam right there. And I'm not talking much, like a fraction of an inch. I prefer 1 5/8 to 1 11/16.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. But other than that, I mean, yeah, as far as build quality is concerned, every major manufacturer in the modern day, your big two, leaps and bounds better than they've been ever.
I see. I'm glad
I'll die on that fucking hill.
I'm glad someone that, because y'all have touched and played and fixed and repaired and restored way more vintage guitars than I've played, and I feel like I've played a bunch at this point. But I know that, like, guys like y'all, y'all are in this world. You're doing the thing. Y'all have seen a whole lot more of them, and so mine's a small sample size. But that's what I've learned from the small sample size. And people that, and don't get me wrong, I do too. I romanticize about these vintage instruments. We all seem to do it, but in the end, as a player and not a collector or someone who's trying to, or as a retailer, someone who's buying and selling vintage instruments, I feel like the stuff coming out today is just way, way better than it's ever been. And people just want to die on the hill that old is better.
Oh man, imagine the mojo of the current production line stuff in 30, 40 years, man. It's going to be awesome. My one gripe, I do have a gripe. The finishes are thicker now than they were back in the day, especially on Gibson. Like Fender, save for the 70s, they shot pretty thin in the 50s, somewhat thicker in the 60s, very, very thick in the 70s and 80s. And now it's like those finishes, even if they're shooting lacquer, they're not gonna wear out the same way that they used to. But the feel's gonna be there, as they get played and over the years. Like they're gonna be great guitars in 30, 40 years, man. They're gonna be awesome.
Pretty much.
Oh no,
go ahead.
No, you go. Absolutely.
I was gonna say pretty much anything like that's like high quality, like custom shop stuff. Your custom shop Gibsons and PRS, all those are going to age so beautifully because they're making them the right way. They're exceptionally well made instruments. Even Gibson now. I know.
I know.
I'm not talking about standard line stuff because like that's kind of whatever. Like, but any like custom shop made instrument is gonna age gracefully.
This is I'm glad that y'all say it, because this is something I feel like I've really noticed, and I know this. I come across as snobby about it, but I'm not. It's a thing. So my R8 that's above my head, y'all can see my 58.
Yeah, I see it. I've been staring at it, man.
Yeah, dude, it's such a rad guitar. I'm about to start doing a series of videos for YouTube where I've got a set of throwbacks that I'm gonna put in it, and
Sick.
I don't dislike the burst buckers that are in it, but I'm like on this quest to make it look as much like an original 58 as possible. So I've been talking the ear off of Zach over at Mythos Pedals, because he does, like, he's really, really, really OCD and nerdy down that rabbit hole. And so he and I are going to sit down and go through like a plan of replacing all the plastics to more error correct. Going to replace, probably going to replace the bridge and the stop. I'm going to do something like go super nerdy, because those kinds of projects keep me from buying another new guitar instead. You know what I mean? But that guitar has a VOS finish, and those Gibson VOS finishes, I didn't think I would feel the difference as much as I could see it. But now, having played that guitar, I pick up a new production Les Paul standard, and I'm like, the finish on this is at least twice as thick. And just I don't like it as much now. And I have a 335 that has the VOS finish, and now it's like I can't even look at a regular 335 and think it looks right, because I know what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
I wonder what the difference on the VOS finish is compared to their standard production. Because I know they're on like a conveyor with an electrostatic sprayer,
Right?
and it's super cool looking. I wonder if like the standard line, like they're probably getting the same lacquer, right? I don't think it wouldn't make too much sense to have somebody changing out as the VOS stuff is coming down the line, changing out the lacquer formula in the gigantic spray robot that they have. But maybe, I don't know, maybe they are. So yeah, I kind of wonder if it's like a difference in sealer or film thickness or what they're doing with that, because it does feel different.
Yeah, it feels different. It looks different. At first, I thought the first time I saw it in pictures, I thought it looked cloudy. And then when I saw it in person, I'm like, no, that's not it. It has this, and it's not matte. It's not, it's none of those things. It just looks different. There's a shine that you get off the thicker finish, that you don't get on that VOS finish. And like, I can look immediately and know. And I'd love to know the difference too. You mentioned their lacquer shooting robot that they've got. I recently saw that in a video for the first time, and I was like, that's how they do it?
It's so cool. So yeah, I think all the colors are still hand applied and everything, but all the clear is just done on a conveyor, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So cool. So yeah, they like hook something into the truss rod, so it's a whole electrostatic system. Super neat.
Yeah, I need to find, because the video I saw was like a 2-second clip, like 3-second as part of a bigger video. And I was like, I need a video of just this, because I want to know how this works. So I was in a band in the mid 2000s, and we got a tour of the Gibson factory because they were talking about doing some kind of artist deal with us, and we're like going through, and they definitely did not have that machine then, because then it was still, like dudes in a spray booth kind of thing.
Yeah.
This podcast is supported in part by Stringjoy Strings. I'm a snob. At least that's what people tell me. I'm never okay with good enough, and that's where Stringjoy Strings come in. They're better than good enough. They're the best. Stringjoy are making some of the finest strings available today right up the road from me in Nashville, Tennessee. They offer custom sets, balanced tension, coated strings, the works. If you need it, they can probably make it happen. You should be using Stringjoy Strings, and if you're going to order from them, you really could help this podcast out by clicking the affiliate link down in the description or show notes below. You get amazing strings, I get a little bit of that back to help the show keep going. It's a win-win situation. Get your Stringjoy Strings today.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I want to see how it works. I know there's a lot of people already screaming like, that's not a hand. That's not the way they used to do. You know what? When you have to produce as many guitars as Gibson Guitars does, that's what you do. They're still scraping binding by hand. And at that time that I took the tour,
they're so good at it.
Oh yeah,
they're so good at it.
Yeah, I was watching the women who do that when I took the tour, and they're literally just going.
There's
shh, and that was it. That's one guitar in like 5 seconds, and it's clean.
It takes me 40 minutes.
They're so good at it. And then at the time, I don't know if they're still doing this, they were still shaping the tops of Les Pauls by hand. They were
Oh wow.
they were putting it literally under a giant belt sander with a dude sticking his hand between the layers of the belt sander and pushing it down on the guitar to shape the Les Paul tops. And this is like in 2004, 2005.
Okay.
What kind of gloves was he wearing?
I wish I could remember. I was too fascinated by the fact that he's sticking his hand in this giant belt sander. And so, I don't know.
You need some really thick gloves for that.
Yeah, that's what I would imagine, because it would burn the hell out of your hand.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Cesar, Mark, come talk to me. Tell me how this is done. Let's do a video. We'll look at the whole process of how y'all are making things there in Nashville.
Those videos he's been doing where he's been building his own guitar lately.
Yeah.
Those are super cool. I really like to see that.
Yeah, I have to admit, I saw those, meant to go back and watch them, then completely forgot they existed till you just mentioned it.
It's a good watch.
I haven't seen him.
Oh, I'm gonna have to go watch it. I love watching guitar build videos, even though I have zero interest in building my own guitars. Like, I just don't. I barely have the time to play them anymore with my day job and everything else going on. So it's like, it's a skill I'd love to have, or I'd love to be that guy who picks up a guitar and is like, yeah, I built this, and now this is what I play. But if I built this, it would be nothing but bad wall art, because it would be completely unplayable, because that's the kind of time I have to learn how to do it. Same thing with like building amplifiers or anything like that. I listened to the Truth About Vintage Amps podcast with Jason Verlinde over at Fretboard Journal, and basically I romanticize about having the time to actually build my own amps and design circuits, and I'm like, that's never ever gonna happen. I'm 43, and if I haven't done it by now, probably not gonna.
I have that desire too, and I know that it's never gonna happen. So I save my money and I call my friends that do this, and I'm like, hey, this is kind of what I'm after. And they're like, man, that sounds really cool. That'll be an easy build. Like, oh, it's easy, cool, all right.
Yeah, see, that's what I would rather
Here's your
do.
money.
That's to me. There's enough great amp makers out there. Somebody is building what I want. You know what I mean? I don't need to build my own. It's I'd rather support the people I know who make great stuff. So
yeah, Charles from Silktone is just building everything that I want without me having to ask for it. So I just
well, he's got a few Seuf guitars too. So
yeah, he does.
Yeah,
yes, he does. Yeah, he just his designs are super one of a kind, and I really love those amps. So I've been kind of stuck on that lately. But I mean, if I'm playing at home, I'm all digital now. I use a neural.
Oh, so. Breaking my heart.
No, dude. I love tube amps, man, and I'll never stop buying them. But
yeah. Me either, apparently. Actually, I traded an amp for that Telecaster I was talking about earlier, and I was like, despite the fact that I have way too many amps, I still was like, am I really gonna trade off an amp for a guitar? I'm like, getting rid of gear is a hard thing. I love tube amps. I've done the digital thing. I did the gigging on a Helix for a while. Played some pit gigs and some show choir gigs, and also some church gigs with it. But and I was just telling y'all before we started recording, this past weekend, I finally tracked down an early gen PV Bandit. And I have talked so much about how good these are because I love them, but I'd forgot how truly good they are until I started playing through this one again.
And yeah, I like them, man.
Yeah, I think Solid State. I tell people about the best sound. I used to run sound in a blues club, pretty popular blues club. And one of the best tones that I ever heard in that club was an old blues guy. I say old because he was probably not that much older than I am now. It's just that long ago. Guy came in, Squire Strat, no case or gig bag. He just walks in carrying it. Plugs directly into the PV Bandit we had as a house amp, and it was one of the Trans Tube series. So we're not even talking like the Teal series or like the OG like mine's in 82. Like the Trans Tube series, tweaks the knobs and proceeded to have the most mind-blowing tone all night long.
Isn't that crazy?
I just, what? Just
Yeah.
absolutely what? I don't know. I
Yeah.
can't wrap
There's
my mind
a
around
there's
it.
a guy around here. There's a guy around here that does that too. His name's Dave, and he just makes everything sound so good.
Yeah. It's frustrating. It's absolutely frustrating. It's like, don't get me wrong, I probably sound just like me on everything I play, but I get excited about what I play. But it's the same reason that I tell people that I don't watch Pete Thorne demos because
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter what Pete does, it's going to sound good. It tells me nothing about what it will do for me if I listen to Pete
No.
Thorne demo something. So, what kind of music are you guys into? Like, I'm curious because, like, I met you guys, and you've got like this. I'm trying to for listeners of the podcast who aren't watching on YouTube, you should go watch on YouTube and drop a like or subscribe while you're there. But y'all have a vibe, and then you make these very classic style guitars, and it's like, so what kind of music are y'all into?
Well,
I don't.
guess
No, I
first.
can't.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. I already know I already think I'm wrong.
Guess based off the vibe.
Oh man. So listeners, for those of you that have never met Sean and Mark and are watching this video, they I doubt. So I'm going to use a term that I used to use for myself back when I had long hair.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved my long hair. I was very vain about it, actually.
Absolutely.
But I called it my dirty Southern rock look. So y'all have like a dirty Southern rock, like a grittiness to you. I love it. It's like, there's a vibe, but you're gonna tell me that like you're super into like Hank Williams or something. Like, I don't know. So I would assume some type of uh heavier rock. Some kind of, I don't want to use the term alternative. That's the 1990s kid in me that wants to say alternative. Like everything
Yeah.
that's not mainstream rock is alternative rock. That's not the case anymore. So that would be my assumption. Something heavy, but you're probably into bands I've never heard of. We'll start there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that you both simultaneously tilted your head to the left as you were like considering this.
No, I mean,
intuition, man.
there's definitely like tons of rock, little bit of metal.
Mhm.
I'm not like a ton of metal.
Yeah.
But I appreciate most of it. Um, a lot of alternative from the 90s.
Yeah.
And the big one, like I'm a big shoegaze guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would make sense. That actually makes a lot of sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the main things I was thinking maybe like harder rock metal, but then also the guitars you'll build are like all single coil. They're all, I'm sure y'all have built a guitar with some humbuckers in it at some point.
Sure. Oh yeah.
But
Sure. Yeah, all the
predominantly
time.
single coil guitars. So the shoegaze thing tracks, especially having a Jazzmaster style guitar in the lineup.
Yeah, and then there's like the shit that we listen to every day,
Right.
which I don't want to alienate anybody, but I'm talking Ace of Base,
Yeah.
Madonna, Chic, Parliament Funkadelic, Usher.
I was so far off for your
Ambrosia.
Ambrosia, yeah. Like if it like the rock that we normally listen to, if it got any softer, it would fucking melt.
That's awesome. I love that. So I'm a bad guitar player in that. I'm a mediocre guitar player, but a bad guitar player in that.
Oh, you're great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But like the stuff I listen to on a daily basis is very like singer-songwriter, Americana, like,
Mm-hmm.
We need to get this song in under 3.5 minutes. The solo can't be more than 8 bars. Like, and 8 bars is a long solo in the music that I'm listening to on a daily basis. And everybody's like, they meet me and I start talking about my blues influences and how much I love blues music. They think that's all I listen to. No. fucking love that music, and I can listen to it all the time. But the stuff that spoke to me as a kid that still speaks to me to this day is, like John Prine and,
Mm-hmm.
I even like, there's a little more guitar solo, but like even like Springsteen. And then you get into like
Yeah.
the stuff that I really kind of turned my ear. I got into Shooter Jennings. I got into Drive By Truckers. I got into, now some of those have some longer extended guitar solos, but it was always
Yeah,
stuff
there's
that,
bluesy elements and
yeah,
all that.
yeah, but it was always stuff that was very like lyric focus and melody focus, and the guitar was just a vehicle to do that. It was never I never really listened to the music that I characterize as the lyrics are only there to get you to between the guitar solos kind of thing, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so that's why when people are like I meet other people who realize I'm really into guitar, and like I was playing a gig a couple of weeks ago, and I like after the first set, dude was like, "Dude, you rip on guitar. You ever listen to Steve Vai?" I'm like, "No, actually never."
What about your playing would give somebody the impression that you are a mega Steve Vai?
Right. Nothing about the way I play guitar should convey Steve Vai. But like people are like, "Oh, he's a guitar player. He should be really into like shreddy guitar guys." And I'm like, "Nope. Don't
Yeah,
don't."
I'm into John Five when he's playing on other people's records.
Yeah, exactly. John Five is
Like,
a killer chicken picker when he plays some country music.
yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, he really is. It's disgusting how good he
Oh,
is.
it's
He's
amazing.
really good.
Yeah.
He's always my one. He's a bad example because his Telecaster isn't exactly a traditional Telecaster, but he's the guy I always point to when I'm like, see, a Telecaster can do metal and country at the same gig, like the same
Right.
dude.
I was watching. I was at a Rob Zombie show a couple years ago when he was still in the band, and I turned. He was like he took a solo. Rob was run through the crowd or whatever. I turned my head for 3 fucking seconds, and he had switched over to a mandolin without me even noticing. I was like, wait a second. Turned back, like, oh, he's got a mandolin now. Where'd that come from?
I love
just
that
shredding it.
so much. Now I'm gonna spend a whole like all evening down a rabbit hole trying to find videos of John Five playing mandolin. I bet they exist. They've got to exist, right?
I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll be the title of the episode. John Five
Yeah.
playing mandolin. So, but I love that you're really into these different musics, and like, because I end up in this weird circle of friends, right, around the guitar circle. It's like I tend to be like the blues dad guy that's around all the like alt rockers and shoegaze guys, and I'm like, no, I don't get any of that at all. Like, I don't get it. It's fine. I don't have anything against it, but like, I'll build these pedal boards, and they're like, oh man, you got like all the delays and reverbs and fuzzes, and I'm like, yep. And I use them all to play blues music. That's it.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no, it works out. It works out. So, I'm trying to really picture this kind of thing. So I'm assuming you guys you played in bands, you've done the whole thing. Do you ever play any live music anymore? Is it just building at this point?
No, we play live.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not as frequently as I'd like. But yeah, no, we still play out.
What's the music scene there in Kansas City like?
It's pretty. It's pretty eclectic, I'd say. There's, you got a lot of pop acts and singer songwriters. There's a big DIY punk and hardcore scene that's pretty cool. But we get kind of like we have some really great venues, but like it seems like there's just not enough of them.
Yeah, I feel like we lost a lot of venues post-COVID. I think a lot of places just didn't reopen.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have either like 50 to 100 cap rooms or 500 and up cap rooms. There's nowhere like there's no smaller medium-sized rooms anymore, which kind of it's kind of weird.
And those like 100 cap rooms, those I've played a bunch of those, and the music scene I grew up in is kind of a weird place. So the blues scene is a little different, but like talking to friends that have played that circuit, you're almost in the places at that size where you're paying to play almost. You know, you're not making any money to gig there. Like the crowd's real small. You're expected to draw the crowd kind of place, you know, to that kind of seat. But then if you're like a little more established, just the tiniest bit, you're not playing those rooms anymore because it doesn't make sense. But then you're still not making these 500 seat venues and into the, I guess the next step would be like the 1,000 seat theater kind of thing.
Right.
It's really kind of depressing to see. I don't know. I feel like the world in general is full of more musicians now than ever, with fewer and fewer places for them to play.
I would agree with that.
It's getting a little frustrating.
Yeah, and it's really tough to play out and make any money too. So you really gotta love it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other thing is there's not a whole lot of money in gigging. I was telling someone the other day that the folks I know that were gigging in the late 60s and 70s, they said, yeah, we used to play out for 100 or 150 a man back then. And you're still doing it today, you know?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that whole thing about artists pricing themselves and charging accordingly and what venues are willing to pay out. That relationship right now is absolutely fucked, and it needs to change. But at the same time, people don't have the same amount of money that like extra cash to spend on entertainment.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a two-edged sword there. It's tough.
Yeah, it's a little disheartening. A lot of the places that I played as, you know, in blues bands, making $400 a night, no matter how many people were in the band, kind of thing. They've dried up or they've gone away, and now it breaks my heart a little bit because, you know, there was a time when I was making my living, not a good one, playing guitar and singing, and that's what I did. And some of the folks that I knew doing it back then, they're still doing it for that same amount of money in fewer places. You know what I mean? It's like, and some of them are the most talented musicians I've ever known in my entire life. And there's just, it feels like there's nowhere to go in that music playing space live to put a band together. To honestly, putting a band together doesn't make much financial sense, period, anymore.
No, because I mean, in an ideal world, you would charge venues and ticket pricing based off the amount of fucking effort you put into the band to play live for people, and travel time, et cetera, et cetera. And nope, here's your $100 split 5 ways.
Yeah, and that's before you talk about the punk and DIY shows that you were talking about earlier, where basically
passing a coffee can around.
That's it.
And hoping you have enough merch to sell or people donate enough to get you to the next place. Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, there was a place in Cleveland, Mississippi, where I went to college, called the Farmhouse, and a lot of DIY punk shows, house shows, that kind of stuff happened there. And dude, half the time the admission was bring a food item, and like it was basically just a place to crash. They'd pass around a bucket to try to get them a little gas money to get to the next venue, because it's not a venue, it's a house. It's just a house, literally a farmhouse out in the country, where they set up and played in the dining room for the rest of the house and anybody that showed up. What a beautiful vibe it was, but at the same time, I'm like,
yeah, it's so much fun doing that.
Yeah, what a great vibe. So, we're actually getting kind of close to the end, but I've got this new idea that I thought of today. You guys know Blake over at the Tone Mob, Blake Weiland?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Love Blake. You know, I basically stole the format for this show from Blake, which is fine. He and I are good friends, so he knows it. I've told him. And he does his classic questions at the ends of his episode. And I'm like, man, I love that. I love that he has something he asks at the end of every episode, and so everybody plays along. So I've been thinking about, if I had classic questions, what would they be? And I posted something earlier on Threads. I posted it yesterday. I was just being a little tongue-in-cheek, a little stupid. I post a lot of stuff on Threads, and I get a lot of interactions on the stupid things I post. Usually people telling me I'm wrong, but that's okay. They can think I'm wrong.
Yeah, you get a lot of that.
I do, man. Look, I can't help it that people don't respect the Telecaster. It's
They're wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I agree wholeheartedly. But I said, I mentioned something about, man, get an awful lot of interactions for none of y'all to be following. I mean, I don't know what's wrong. I got donuts and bourbon and Telecaster over here, Telecasters, and the number of people who commented like bourbon. I was like, maybe that's a thing. Maybe I need to talk about bourbon more because I am a bourbon aficionado in my price range. I can't afford the super high dollar bourbons.
Sure.
So you guys are going to be my test market for a classic question. Let's see what y'all think. Listeners, y'all let me know what y'all think about this as a like ending kind of question. What is your favorite cocktail? What's your favorite liquor drink? Don't give me a beer. Don't cop out. So what's your favorite like drink?
I have two, and they're kind of the same drink, just with different liquors. But an old fashioned. That's how I judge the worth of a bartender, is how well they can make an old fashioned. And then just a classic daiquiri.
Oh, really?
Yeah, love daiquiris.
I think I've had.
I'm not talking about like
my whole life.
I'm not talking about like you're in New Orleans and you go to the frozen daiquiri spot and walk around with a styrofoam cup.
In Louisiana, maybe not in New Orleans, but in Louisiana, you just drive through the daiquiri hut and they give you
right.
Pick it up.
But yeah, it's a cool. old fashioned for sure.
I love that. Old fashioned is a really good one. It's
or a Sazerac.
Ooh, Sazerac. I got to be in the mood for a Sazerac.
But yeah, it's a tough hang. But
old fashioned is like so when I go to a new a new Mexican restaurant or taco spot, right? Or I guess taco spot would be a little different. But I'm always curious about their fajitas because like fajitas are simple. They're really easy to make. Should be really hard to screw up. Yet I have been to places that can screw it up. And so that's like how are you at like this simple thing? Then I'll trust you with like there's actually not very much complicated but like tacos are an art. So I worry about those if you can't get fajitas right, kind of thing, right? But old fashioned is a great test of a bartender. If you can get something with the simplest ingredients correct. What about you, Mark? What's your go-to?
I'm a pretty simple guy. So I don't love cocktails.
Oh.
Like if you were to like ask me what I would want at the nicest place you can imagine, I'd just say as far as a cocktail goes, I'll either have a Bloody Mary with gin or a gin and soda with a little lime.
Okay.
That's it. Like I'm not much of a cocktail guy.
Gin and tonic was the first drink I can remember where I was like, oh, I get gin. I get it now. A gin Bloody Mary.
Oh, it's so much better.
I may have to try that. I've never, I bartended for years. I never had anyone order one. I've never thought about that as a concept. I know vodka Bloody Marys aren't really my thing. Maybe gin changes that.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a bartender for some years, and I toward the end of my stint as a bartender was the start of the craft cocktail movement. So yeah, I've had all of them, and just like now, I drink Miller Lite. I've had all the good beers in the world. I've had all the cocktails, and I like an old fashioned and a Miller Lite.
I love the simplicity.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah,
I've in my aging, I have gotten to a point now where I don't even really get beer anymore. Every now and again, don't get me wrong, I'm a snobby IPA drinker. Listeners, y'all knew that was coming, right? You knew that was coming.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, I love it. Now, what I also don't love, I don't like the IPA war of how bitter can we make this, but also market it in such a way you're not willing to say you hate it. Because that seemed to be a trend there for a little bit. You know, let's make this super catchy name and this great artwork and make this the worst tasting beer you've ever imagined, but you're not willing to say you hate it.
Yeah,
And
because
then let's make it 14%.
Yeah. Man, I had a conversation recently with another host of another podcast, and we were talking bourbon, and they were talking about high proof bourbon. And personally, I don't like high proof bourbon. I think by the time you make it high proof, you're like stealing away the stuff that made bourbon bourbon. So I'm like a 80, 90 proof guy. You get above that, I'm like, it's fine, not my thing.
Yeah, it all kind of does that gasoline taste thing after that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, but I'm at a point where my favorite drink is a perfect Manhattan. That's my test of a bartender. First of all, if I say perfect Manhattan and their eyes don't glass over, because most of them have made a Manhattan. It's a smaller demographic that knows what I mean when I say a perfect Manhattan. But you know, if I'm at the house on my own, I'm a bourbon on the rocks, splash of water guy. I'm so boring and lame. I'm so lame.
No, that is perfect. If you ask my opinion, like, why fuck it up?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. It's so simple. It is so easy. And if you're drinking good bourbon, that's all you need. So, well, awesome. Gentlemen, before we hop off of here and head over to Patreon, listeners, you know the drill. You can go over to patreon.com/40watt podcast, where for $5 a month, you can get all the bonus episodes when we record episodes. We, the royal we, me over here. You can grab those. Super simple, and you help keep this show on the tracks. Tell everybody where they can find out about Seuf Guitars. Where all are you?
We are on the World Wide Web at seufguitars.com, and check out our Instagram. It's just at seufguitars.
Awesome.
And shoot us an email at seufguitars@gmail.com.
There you go.
That's where you're going to get the best interaction.
And last I checked, these gentlemen have told me they still have the OH20 that I played at Fretboard Summit that I still think about all the time, that is still for sale. Ask them about that too if you're looking for a guitar. Yeah. It is we didn't even talk about y'all's relicking, which is absolute perfection. Like, listeners, if you like just a played in instrument that doesn't look relicked and it just feels and looks played in, you got to go check out the guitars over on the Instagram page. Go look at the pictures. Well, gentlemen, let's head over to Patreon. Listeners, thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging out. Watchers on YouTube, thank you for watching. Thank you for hanging out. I keep doing this because y'all keep coming back, and I sure appreciate it. But until next time, be good to yourselves, be kind to each other, and make some noise.